How's it going? I see there are almost like 70 people here. So what I can give a little bit of a background on why we're doing town halls. I feel like in our ecosystem, because it's so decentralized, like people are working in small groups, they're heads down on different things. And at least I felt that there isn't enough of like actual public communication happening where anyone can participate, because it is an open source project and it's hard to stay updated on kind of like the various different things going on and different aspects of things. So hopefully this is not the last town hall that we're doing. And we wanted to keep it more casual as well. I think there have been previous ones where it feels a little bit like, just the speakers are sort of like talking to everybody else. We want it to be more casual, people to chime in, just have like a regular discussion. Like everyone on this call, I'm assuming, is in one way or the other, basically working full time in the ecosystem and has something to do. We all have a shared kind of like interest in the success of the underlying infrastructure and all the work that is happening. So with that, like there are some slides. Like again, I don't want to make it more like a presentation. I'm just one person in the ecosystem, but something to kick things off with, like some topics that we can all discuss. So let me just share the slides, and I can start walking through, at least to highlight some of the topics that are on my mind. And then there are a few other people who have sort of like volunteered to speak as well. So we'll go over that and then just open it up for casual chat. So here's what I had in mind. Let's just have a couple of slides. I think some people might be new here. Some people might like a refresher on sort of like my idea of like why we are all here. Like, what's this Bitcoin thesis? What are the challenges with it, right? And what are the opportunities out there that we are all excited about? And then I sort of like wanted to take a look back at the last 2 years, like since the mainnet launch. Many exciting things have happened, like, a lot of frustrating things have happened. Different people have different kind of like views. So I just wanted to share like my viewpoint from what I've observed, what I'm noticing in the ecosystem, what some like really good, valid feedback people have received over the years, both from like the outside of the ecosystem, also internally from various developers who've been building. And then again, when I say the most important areas for 2023, this is like my idea of like in my head what I think are the most important areas, right? Like this, we're in a very unique position where I think a lot of the crypto projects out there, they sort of like quote unquote claim to be decentralized, but they are usually not as decentralized as you would think that they are, right? And over here, I think the level of decentralization is so much that I frankly think that it's actually a pretty big challenge for this ecosystem. That how do you even efficiently work together and try to push towards like common goals and so on, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that there is no consensus that these are the important areas for 2023, right? Like different people might have completely different views, and that's totally fine. I'm just presenting what I've noticed in the ecosystem and what I think could be the really important areas in 2023. So with that, I think just a recap, looking back, I think at the time of the mainnet launch, like, I've been building in Bitcoin for close to 10 years now. I think it was one of the most exciting times. Obviously, I'm biased. And the developers in the ecosystem did achieve something really amazing, right? Like if you think about how big of a engineering effort that was early 2021, and the unique things that went online. And I think over time, you sort of like discount that, right? Like because you want so many other new features, you're lacking the things that you need. You sort of like discount the stuff that you already have. But at that time, it was super critical to just take proof of transfer live. Like it's a consensus, new type of consensus mechanism that is sort of like talking to Bitcoin L1. No one has done this before. People are earning BTC rewards on the main Bitcoin chain. And we were pushing a new virtual machine, a new programming language live. Like imagine how big of a task that is. Like you're building a new programming language, the new virtual machine. We believe that this is a very safe programming language, but we were just sort of like going out in the wild, right? Like they had no idea what's actually going to happen. And to see it actually work and people appreciate it and people love working with Clarity, that was a huge deal. And then the Bitcoin read part, like which is a really unique aspect of the stacks layer that you can read Bitcoin transactions. Again, it was a very, very unique property. It's not like we can look at some other chain or ecosystem and basically pick that here. So that was, I felt like the mainnet launch, and then it came with a lot of energy and excitement and new builders, and people kind of like started, getting really excited about what we were doing. And it coincided with a sort of like a bull market out in the broader industry as well, which I think from a timing perspective, like that was actually pretty good. Looking back, I think we have more than like 32,000 contracts deployed, like 650K NFTs minted. The NFT thing, like honestly, caught me by surprise. Like I wasn't paying attention, and there was like such a strong interest from the NFT community that over time, I got personally very excited and interested in that as well. But initially, I wasn't paying attention at all. Like that was like totally organic, came in, and that was great to see. I do think like there are some strengths in the ecosystem. Like if you just look at the total number of developers. So the recent Electric Capital report, it basically puts the Stacks project at like project number 28 in terms of the number of developers. And I think we're still sort of like, sort of a small project out there. And I think it's okay to recognize that as a decentralized ecosystem, as a project, the footprint is still very, very small, right? And that can be challenging for people, and we're going to get more into it just in a minute. So some numbers that I personally think are super interesting. Like imagine like more than 2,000 BTC have actually gone out as BTC rewards for people. Like that's huge, right? Like even at today's numbers, this is something like close to $50 million or so. But Bitcoin, we know we're in a sort of like a bear market right now. Bitcoin might be worth a lot more than this. I personally believe that. And being able to actually move that large amount of numbers, that means there's something there. There's some sort of a product market fit where there are people who are genuinely interested in doing work that earns them Bitcoin. And the proof of transfer mechanism is sort of like the only way out there, the most unique thing out there with which they can do that. And I think there are plays on this. There are other remixes of the same concept that is very, very unique around Bitcoin that we can actually use. And I think we have a very, very strong community, like, regardless of the broader market conditions, the interest in people actually participating in stacking has been going very, very strong quarter over quarter. There's a very consistent a number of like entities and community members that are basically, the diehard believers. And you have that. You have the core community of the diehard believers. And that's usually for any open source project, that's like the hardest part. Once you have the diehard community, you can grow from there. But if you never get that initial diehard fan base, you don't stand a chance. And I think it's important to realize that we actually have that. We actually have the diehard community that would basically their conviction levels are very, very high, and their belief in the Bitcoin thesis is like very high. So I think before I get into the challenges, maybe let's sort of like go up a level and talk about like this Bitcoin thesis. Like some of you are obviously very well familiar with it, but for people who are new, it's basically this idea that has been in Bitcoin even from the early days. Like when I started in 2013, like this was like a common thing that a lot of people would say, that Bitcoin is the main network. Like it is the most decentralized, most secure chain out there. It has the best shot of actually becoming money, sort of like having the global adoption. And then there are experiments happening, which are smaller. And if something useful will get built out of these experiments, it will eventually be implemented on Bitcoin. And it's not just that, hey, you're seeing the experiments, let them run, and we'll just copy them over. But those things would be implemented in a better way, like in a more professional, more secure, because you would have all the lessons from the experiments. And they would actually be more valuable once you'll see them implemented on Bitcoin, right? So that's a very critical part of the thesis. That, for example, let's say some use case like DEXs take off. Once you bring them to BTC and you unlock Bitcoin capital, like the big elephant in the room, like that is going to be a lot more valuable than running the experiment on a much, much smaller chain, right? So that's the thesis. And I think I personally believed in it for a very long time. And we're now starting to see actual real data out in the wild that is proving that thesis, which is super interesting. I'm going to hold on to that thought for a while, and let's first start looking into some of the challenges that we are facing as an ecosystem, or what I've noticed that a lot of people are facing those challenges, including me as well. So the first thing is that for one reason or the other, the number of times people have like sort of told me that, oh, you guys are doing great work, you're such smart people, how come like nobody knows about this project, right? Like it just remains like for I think you could try to debug that problem, like why is that the case? But we should admit that in the grand scheme of things, we are a very, very small ecosystem. Not a lot of people actually know about, they might have heard about it, about Sachs, that they don't really know what it is. They haven't taken a deep dive. They haven't taken it seriously. And this idea, frankly, of building on Bitcoin, a lot of people brush it off, or at least have been brushing it off in the past years, right? Like this sort of like actually reminds me of, so I've been close with the founders of Solana and Avalanche when they were starting off, and interestingly, a lot of people would brush off the idea that some other smart contract L1 is going to take off. Right? They're like, Ethereum has already taken the market. Why would people go and build? It was almost like a contrarian view that why would developers actually go to a smaller ecosystem, right? And I was in the camp that this seems obvious to me, that if a better chain comes around that is offering better tooling, people will go there. And I would say until recently, until the Solana momentum happened, everybody was skeptical of that thesis. And then almost instantly, everyone flipped as soon as they saw the data and they saw like developers actually going to a non-Ethereum chain that wasn't even EVM compatible and building over there. Like suddenly the entire sentiment and the entire thesis in the market just switched that, oh, it just seems obvious that there will be other L1s. It wasn't an obvious thing, like even like a year and a half ago. In fact, everybody else would just push back on it. And I think it's a similar thing happening with this building on Bitcoin thesis as well. Like there's a lot of just resistance. People are like, I haven't seen anything interesting on Bitcoin in like 5 years, 6 years. Why would that change moving forward? And people started writing off Bitcoin. But I think we're seeing that with ordinals. Like I'll get into it a little bit more. But my belief is that as soon as people start seeing actual data points, suddenly, a shift like Solana and L1s happens. That, oh, this is obvious. Like, why wouldn't people actually build on Bitcoin? But we're not there yet, right? Like if there are developers and entrepreneurs who are actually, they need to raise capital for their company, and they go and they pitch this idea of building on Bitcoin, let's admit it, like tons of resistance out there. People would be like, I'm not sure if this is ever going to happen. And I think that just feels like a uphill challenge. Like you're trying to take a boulder like uphill, right? It's not like you're taking the boulder downhill. Now with ordinals, I think you might actually start taking the boulder downhill, but we'll sort of get into it. So the lack of funding for devs and startups, I think it's a very real thing, right? Like it's a day-to-day challenge. People need capital. And given the decentralization of the ecosystem, and this is another point that is worth talking about, this is not an ecosystem where there is some single company with a large treasury that is just going to fund anything that the ecosystem needs. It just doesn't exist, right? Like there are companies that have their own business motives. The initial distribution is actually very decentralized. People barely, any single entity is barely sitting on like even double digits percent of the supply, right? Like everybody's in single digits. And some of the even the larger companies, their treasuries are locked for something like 7 years, right? Like the early team members went like really above and beyond in trying to ensure that this is an actual decentralized ecosystem. No one has like a lot of the supply. The early sort of like distribution was like cut down into pieces and given away to a lot of different folks. That's good for decentralization, but that means that you don't have like a large treasury that just basically just funds everything. Even the foundation, and Brittany's going to talk later as well, is not the type of foundation that people expect in other ecosystems, right? And I think that's something that we need to realize, that if there isn't a lot of sort of like funding available internally, for various reasons, and then people aren't really buying the Bitcoin thesis, that's a pretty bad situation, right? Because you need the capital to be able to do what you want to do. Obviously, some people have been able to raise capital. Trust Machine has been able to raise capital, Hero and others, and I think some startups who are new have been able to raise capital as well. But in general, I think this is a big issue, and I think we as an ecosystem need to look into it. The next thing is, I do think that there has been very strong pushback from a subset of the Bitcoin community. They're more on the fundamentalist side. I think things are changing with them as well, but it has been painful. Like, it's not easy to be doing something and then have like a swarm of people yelling at you all the time, right? So I know a lot of you take it very gracefully. You know, we try to educate, we try to do all these things, but these small things matter. Like, instead of people like cheering for you and being very receptive and welcoming, there is this pushback, and let's just admit it, right? And I think it's worth looking into some things that could have been done better from the ecosystem side, and some things like where maybe these people just don't matter, right? Again, there's a new crowd coming in that is actually very open to the type of stuff that we are doing, and I think there's a clear path forward there. And finally, I think this is something that was definitely a blind spot for me personally as well. Like, looking back, we were expecting a lot from the blockchain infrastructure, and I sort of view that as like a public good, right? And I think it went through something that should be defined as a tragedy of the commons. Like, it's a common good, everyone benefits from it, but no one really has the single responsibility that we need to go and do something about improving the public infrastructure. Obviously, some people do, some devs are doing hard work on it, but it was not something that was critical in everyone's minds, that we do collectively as an ecosystem to be able to grow. We need to dedicate a lot more resources than we think to the core infrastructure. And it was, I think, off by an order of magnitude. Like, there were just very few developers who were, really skilled. And there's a knowledge gap as well. Like, a handful of people really know the core workings of the internal consensus algorithms. And I think you just need a lot more open source developers in various entities in a decentralized way to be able to do it. And I think that has been a pretty big challenge as well. And in terms of like some valid feedback that we've received, and I think the number one is that if you are a Bitcoin layer, right, and we'll get into a little bit of the Bitcoin L2 versus not type of stuff as well. But if you're a Bitcoin layer and you're building for Bitcoin, and let's say you're getting users to be like, hey, come and try out Bitcoin NFTs, or you can come and try out these Bitcoin applications. I do think that it's an extremely valid criticism that when that user actually comes to try out Bitcoin NFTs, they can't even use BTC. Like, that is the state right now. I know there's XBTC, which is a custodial thing that is sort of live, but I don't think it's like that well integrated anywhere. Like, you can't really use it on NFT marketplaces. It's not that well integrated with wallets. So the first impression that a user sort of like gets is that, oh, you were using the marketing of Bitcoin, but when I actually start using any of the applications, there's actually the only option is STX, right? So it feels like a switch and bait, right? Like that you're trying to tell people that this is all about Bitcoin, but then they actually have to go purchase a different asset to use as gas fees and so on, right? So I do think that looking back, it might have been a lot better if the network went live with some sort of a Bitcoin integration live, so that the user experience that people are having is more in line with the mission of the project, right? So people can actually directly use BTC, even if it was custodial like day one. I think even that would have been better. But there's a big difference between technically what's possible, but what people see at the surface level. And some Bitcoin folks would have a very bad reaction to this thing. And I think that has definitely been a lesson. And I'm already seeing a bunch of wallets like Xverse and Hero Wallet. They're already sort of like on top of it and running towards that direction. But we should keep in mind that for 2 years, 2021, 2022, there was this big gap that was sort of like, at least like in my blind spot, right? I didn't realize like how it's actually offending people and how there's a mismatch between what people would expect from a Bitcoin layer and what was actually live. And I think switching to a big BTC economy is something that a lot of Bitcoiners would actually celebrate. That, okay, now you're switching to the Bitcoin standard. Now I can actually use BTC. Everything's priced in BTC, and I can actually use BTC in different applications. I think that's what people expect from Bitcoin layers, and that was a very, very important lesson. The second thing is more developer related. That it's great that you can write, you can read from the Bitcoin chain, but it's sort of like the loop is not fully there, right? Like I can read it, I can do some interesting things with it, but I can't really write back. We knew that the writes were important when mainnet launch was happening. It's actually a much more complex technical challenge, but over time it became more and more clear that writes are actually critical, right? That writes are where a lot of the action actually happens, right? So it's not just that you have 50% of the features, you actually have less than 50% because people want to use reads and writes together, right? So that's a big thing that sBTC sort of like covers and so on. And finally, I think like, again, in optimizing for decentralization, so a lot of these newer chains, you basically effectively have to run a data center node to be able to do anything meaningful, right? And we optimize for really, Bitcoin style. You can run a node on a Raspberry Pi. Anyone in the world can run a node. If you can run a Bitcoin node, you should be able to run a stacks layer node. And same with our blocks. That blocks were based on Bitcoin block times, which are between 10 to 20 minutes. And the users got used to like really, really fast block times. They got used to like one big lesson is that users and even developers, they maybe don't care about decentralization as much, which sort of like you could argue that they should, and maybe that's the one thing that Bitcoin does really well. But the network speed and capacity did become like a very, very big bottleneck. There was a time when everything was going like up and to the right. More users are coming, more developers are coming. The network is sort of like, struggling, and there are some upgrades that are being pushed. But I do think that there was sort of like a natural ceiling that the ecosystem was hitting because you just couldn't absorb more users. Just at the pure blockchain level, you couldn't absorb more users. You couldn't have more NFT mints. You couldn't have more applications because the speed wasn't there. And I think that was sort of like a natural limit to growth in the last 2 years. Like I could just feel it, right? Like here's the limit. Until the speed and the capacity of the network can be improved, you can't expect to see more growth. Like you just won't be able to absorb it. It's not about awareness. It's not about having more use cases. It's actually as simple as that. Your network just can't absorb more growth. And I think we hit that limit. A lot of people started focusing on scalability solutions and other sorts of stuff going on, but that was actually a very, very, very big thing. So that's sort of like my view of what are the key challenges and what's some of the really good, valid feedback we have received that we can sort of like use to move forward. Before I sort of like now switch over to like the opportunity out there, I don't want this to be like too much of a presentation. Like any comments here right now?
I would just say I agree with like everything, Muneeb. I think that everything that you've said, I've seen in the ecosystem, and so I hope that people really take notes on this, because I think it's very clear, and I believe that if we can do this, it'll really help us seize the moment.
Yeah, if we work together in 2023, we're going to put stacks on the map. All right, and we don't have to be like number 28 on Electric Capital. We could be like top 10 by next year. Sky's the limit. Yeah.
All right. I think on that note, let me switch to the next slide a little bit. So with all of that sort of like background in mind, this is what I think is possible with Bitcoin L2s, right? I think if you look at the Bitcoin L1, just mathematically, there is no way that you could onboard 1 billion people to Bitcoin at Bitcoin L1. It's just impossible, like mathematically impossible. You will need something else. And I think that's why there's so much interest in Lightning, like a Bitcoin L2 in the Bitcoin community. But if you look at all these use cases that people are just doing today, like some of the killer apps are actually stable coins and DEXs and NFT marketplaces and so on. None of that is possible in Bitcoin until you have a L2, like a Bitcoin L2, that has fully expressive smart contracts and a global ledger. And that is literally what the Stacks project delivers, right? So in some ways, I think this project, I consider it to be on the critical path to even the success of Bitcoin, right? Because to reach 1 billion people, you wouldn't be able to do it on the L1. There has to be some sort of an L2, and just like Lightning is a critical part of taking Bitcoin, global. I think the Stacks layer can be a critical part of actually scaling out these use cases, bringing all things like stablecoins and other type of programmable things to the Bitcoin ecosystem and doing that, right? So this is a very good learning. Interestingly, I think language matters, like how we describe what Stacks is. So recently I've been talking to a bunch of Bitcoiners. I basically tried sitting down with a bunch of them, right? Like, Twitter could be noisy and people are arguing and whatnot. I made a point to like show up at a bunch of like events where these people are there and just like sit down with them and try to learn and ask them like, hey, look, you've been very vocal about your criticisms. I want to learn, like, tell me, what can we do better? And some of the valid feedback is coming from such conversations. And one of the things I've actually learned is a lot of these core Bitcoin folks are extremely aligned on Bitcoin L2s. They will become evangelists if you sort of like talk to them in the right way and explain them that, hey, this is a Bitcoin L2. And they're like, well, Bitcoin L2s are great, right? Because people shouldn't do like, even the people, like, imagine with ordinals, everyone who hates ordinals, who's saying don't do this on L1, even they would agree that you should use Bitcoin L2s to do ordinals, right? So there's like such strong support for that. And I think that's a lesson for communication, for marketing, for different, open source documentation, that we should try to embrace that. And we should, and I think we actually went a step further, that not just in communication embracing this, but in the next upgrade, the Nakamoto release, there's actually consensus level changes happening, where instead of the Stacks layer having a separate security budget, it's going to start following Bitcoin finality. Like Bitcoin decides what is the order of Stacks blocks and transactions and so on. And I think it basically solidifies that this is a Bitcoin L2 versus something separate and something that is like loosely connected to Bitcoin. So I think that's a very important thing. Again, with the Nakamoto release, given the decentralized ecosystem, it's not guaranteed to go live. Like, people have to actually contribute to the code, build it. There's a SIP process. Miners need to sort of like upgrade and so on. But now we're used to it. We've seen a couple of upgrades happen on the network already. The 2.1 stuff is happening right now. So there will be a similar process. But when I talk about Nakamoto release, technically it's a proposed release. And if the community agrees and the SIP process goes through, that's when this goes live. But so far I've seen like extremely strong support for it, given all the sort of like new features that are being built. And I think this thing about the market opportunity just remains true even right now. Bitcoin is close to $500 billion of untapped capital. If you can make it programmable, I believe that is a very, very large opportunity for developers. But for that, you need to make BTC the thing that people are programming, right? I think there's a huge difference. So the decentralized peg opening up the gates to actual capital to flow into a Bitcoin L2 is extremely important. And I think that's why some of you might have seen like how excited I am about Ordinal's things on Twitter and whatnot. And I think the biggest reason is I've been in the Bitcoin community for a very long time. I've never seen a use case take off this quickly in Bitcoin ever in history. Like this is like going back 11 years almost, right? Ever. Like this is the use case that has gained the most attention and users in the fastest amount of time and has just completely taken over a lot of the culture and talking points. And I think this is also the opportunity to sort of like bring back the Bitcoin builders culture, because the people who are now in the conversations or whose opinions matter are most of the builders. They're not the typical podcast hosts that have sort of like, dominated conversations in the past few years. And I think this is basically our moment to shine. So like the way I look at this, that this ecosystem has amazing talent, like literally amazing people really honest, really hardworking people who have done everything right, went above and beyond to do things in a compliant manner, went above and beyond to build like secure programming languages, think about scalability, like literally anything you look at, the folks here are basically done an amazing job. And this is the time to actually start getting credit for what you're doing, right? Because there is real need as the Bitcoin gas fees basically start going up. Like there's a clear parallel, right? Like people in Ethereum were talking about L2s even before the gas spikes. Nobody really cared that much. It's when users are feeling the pain and gas fees are skyrocketing that suddenly Bitcoin, Ethereum L2s become like this big thing that, oh my God, we have to rush, we have to do something about scalability. We have to build the L2s as quickly as possible. And Ethereum L2s are already a big thing. Like if you just look at the usage of these things, how many developers, how much capital is going there. And I think, again, Bitcoin is a bigger network. And as the gas fees effectively keep going up, everyone's going to feel the pain. And not that I'm enjoying that people are going to feel the pain, but it's basically the block size, the Bitcoin block is undervalued, and it will basically start, efficient markets will start pricing it for what it's actually worth. And Bitcoin L2s would become like this obvious thing. And all the work that people in this ecosystem have been doing for a while suddenly becomes extremely in demand, right? Like people are, it's like a painkiller at that point because you're delivering something that the market like really wants. So I think that's why I'm so excited by developers like hustling and staying up late nights to ship upgrades to wallets and so on, because the way you should think about it, this ecosystem has the best builders, the best entrepreneurs in the broader Bitcoin ecosystem. This is your time to shine, right? Like this is your time to show that we are actual builders. We can ship code, we can ship solutions that people actually want. We have really talented entrepreneurs who can actually go out and raise capital. Right? Because it's like historically it's been hard to even find talented people in the broader Bitcoin ecosystem for VCs to even put money behind, right? So there's like just so much opportunity for all the builders here that I'm excited about. So I do think taking all the lessons from the last 2 years, focusing all of those upgrades into the sBTC launch and the Nakamoto release, along with capturing this interest and momentum that is building up today is sort of like what I think is possible in 2023. So this is a great graphic that a bunch of people made, and it's so true that people just see the value of BTC only if you think of that as almost like a glacier, right? Like you only see the top, but what's possible is that there's actually a bigger thing underneath it that's unlocked, that can be unlocked, that's not discovered right now. And it's everything else that can be built on Bitcoin. And as a Bitcoiner, I really love working on this thing because it actually grows the BTC economy. Like it just grows the pie for everybody, right? So it's just like a net good for everyone who's in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it's basically like a no-brainer. So I don't want to sort of like take too much time. I want to hand over to other people, have conversations. But one thing I would mention is that this is, again, just my personal opinion, that last year with the Terra Luna crash, the FTX crash, and everything sort of like blowing up in the industry, I do think that there was a bunch of lowlights, but I also feel that they're sort of behind us, right? Like people who were frustrated in the ecosystem, they wanted to leave, they've sort of left, right? Like, and even devs and founders who were building in the ecosystem, but didn't really have a real need for the unique properties of a Bitcoin L2, they've also sort of like gone. And the folks who are around, like most of them, I do think they actually believe in the thesis. I actually think they know that they are taking a contrarian bet. They know that there are many challenges ahead, but they believe that this is actually a really large market and they can crack it, right? So I think that's a sort of like an opportunity, right? Like you can look in the rear view mirror at like, okay, maybe the worst point is actually already behind me, and now I can sort of like start focusing on the things that are exciting, the challenges that we know can be solved, and like focus the energy there to move forward. One other thing I want to bring up as well, like something that I personally felt, is that the level of decentralization in this ecosystem is so much that sometimes people are just isolated, right? Like you're talking to a few folks, you're in different entities, you're kind of like in your local maxima. And I think that was one of the reasons to have this town hall as well, just to have more communication. It could be public, right? Like everybody's working on this open source project. There's no harm in people just publicly talking with each other or having like, other chat channels in Discord or something, and just like re-engaging with everybody else who's also working in the ecosystem. I think it actually goes a long way, because part of the fun of like doing startups is that you're surrounded by like brilliant people and you're really motivated, you're working hard, but then you gain energy from similarly minded folks who are doing the same thing, right? Like who are running really, really hard alongside you. And I think it just gives that sense of like community and belonging as well, that I feel like, especially because of like extreme decentralization, like sometimes we really miss on. Like people don't know what's going on, they don't know like what's the clear roadmap, who to talk to, and so on. And I think there are working groups now that are working on a bunch of these things, and hopefully things will get better. I'm gonna stop here now because I feel like I've talked for more than what I expected to.
Yeah, Muneeb, I just want to give a huge +1 to everything that you said, and really a shout out to the entire Stacks community. The Stacks community continued to build on Bitcoin at a time when it was really contrarian. And now you're seeing .btc domain names really leading the charge, shipping 100x improvements in building the user experience around ordinals and Bitcoin layers. So, really happy to see that. And, to your point, Muneeb, the people in this community are the true believers, the ones that are, taking a really principled approach to thinking about things like decentralization and censorship resistance and the principles that Bitcoin was really founded on. And now it's all hands on deck. And we're all sort of like moving towards sBTC, being able to provide a more productive use cases for Bitcoin and Web3, and really reinforcing Bitcoin's value as a secure settlement layer. So really happy to see this alignment in the community, and excited for what the year ahead has in store.
All right, I think we maybe wanted Devakar to chime in on some of the blockchain related stuff, because I know that has been a challenge historically.
Yeah, let's see. Do we want to continue going back to the slides? And is that something, Andre, you were showing? Otherwise, I can just quickly share my screen.
Yeah, I can share my screen for the rest of it.
Cool. So for those who've been keeping track, Stack 2.1 will, with any luck, be released this week. There is a confirmed block height for 2.1 rules activation. But I think something that a lot of people have been struggling with and have been frustrated with is just that delivery of things on the blockchain front often get delayed. And it's not to say that it's lack of trying, or that people are kind of not putting in the work. It's a very complex system. Even things like testing take a lot of time. There are unknown unknowns. All that to say is these are hard problems, but we have a lot of smart people in the ecosystem, and that's what we're here for, to tackle these hard problems. And so one of the things that I've been looking at and just bringing people together to discuss is just predictable delivery of milestones on the blockchain front is really critical for sBTC to be successful. We want, there's an aggressive timeline, and we want to kind of manage expectations against that and be able to deliver against that timeline. So last month, all of the core contributors to the Stacks blockchain got together to really acknowledge this as a problem and tackle this head on. It's not something that will organically take care of itself. Like, we really need to say, okay, here's a problem, and intentionally make efforts to fix it. So I put some links in. These are all public GitHub discussions. So everyone in the community should be able to go check them out. So there was a lot of discussion around how do we make improvements to the development process, everything to from sizes of PRs to how tasks are scoped, to how do we allocate reviewers and load distribution amongst reviewers, getting code reviews on time. testing improvements. So there are lots of ideas in there, and some of those things have already been implemented and in flight. I mentioned a few of them here, and there are other things that are happening on this front as well, just to kind of tighten up the day-to-day, week-to-week kind of development. And then there was a separate discussion around just making the roadmap more predictable. And so you'll see more on this very shortly, but basically one of the proposals that I made was to track milestones on a 4-week cadence and have explicit windows for planning and testing. That's just one of the many ideas that are in there. And again, I welcome the community to take at these discussions and participate and put in their own proposals. I know that Igor from Trust Machines and Jude from the Sachs Foundation have been spending a lot of time this week, now that hopefully 2.1 is behind us, putting together a much more detailed technical roadmap for sBTC. Again, it's a very, very complex project. Like it's, I think logically we should all be thinking about this as launching a new blockchain. It's effectively similar in complexity. There's a lot of moving parts and it impacts pretty much every single thing that has currently been built in the ecosystem. So wallets, APIs, SDKs, the developer tools, explorers, all the applications. And so there's lots of moving pieces to consider. So please be patient as folks kind of put this together. But I'm hoping that in the coming days, we should have access to a much more detailed technical roadmap that has granular milestones. And I think maybe Muneeb, you already mentioned this earlier, but one of the things that as the ecosystem, I think we had kind of struggled with over the last year, 2 years is just an underinvestment in blockchain resourcing in general, just the number of engineers we have who can make contributions to the blockchain compared to some other ecosystems. It was just too small to really get meaningful things done. So compared to 3-4 months ago, we made a lot of progress on that across the ecosystem. I think we have more than doubled our capacity and we're still continuing to hire across multiple entities in the ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone. And again, it's going to be a community effort, everyone kind of rowing in the same direction for us to be able to make strong progress on some of these things. And that's it for me.
That's amazing. That's going to be a game changer for us. The 4-week cadence, right? That's huge. Thanks so much for leading this initiative.
Yep. So stay tuned for more community-facing roadmap with more of these milestones coming out over the next few days and weeks. We're certainly working tirelessly to get that out and really ramping up capacity to do that. I know there's according to the Electric Capital report, there's over 100 full-time devs working in the Stacks ecosystem. Many of them are focused on the technical rollout for sBTC, as well as other functions like go-to-market. So there really is a lot of effort going towards this. And I think we have a quick update from Alex Miller.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Hand up as well.
Can you guys hear me? Good. Okay. So Hero, you probably know us as the DevTools company here. Dwanger just went through obviously all the work that's being done to help make the blockchain development process more, continue to improve. What we're doing internally on kind of the other side of things is it's all just about supporting builders on sBTC, obviously on ordinals, is that's kind of spinning up now. I've gotten a lot of questions, obviously, over time of like, what are the things Hero does? What are the things not? And like I said, it really all comes back to this. So, the biggest ask that I always have for all of you guys is be communicating back to our team what you need, especially in a time like this where there's a lot of new opportunities, new products coming out. Like if you are building something and need an endpoint in the Hero, in the Stacks API that Hero builds, like ping us in Discord and let us know. Our team's always in there. We're always looking for the things that we can be doing to support you guys. There's a lot of exciting stuff that's going to be shipping in the next week and a half, in the next month and a half, both for general Stacks development and again for ordinals stuff. Look out for the Ordinals Explorer that our team's working on right now. And again, as we continue to move down this path on sBTC, all of our products obviously going to be updated as quickly as possible, at every release point to make sure that we've got everything you need in there. So just keep fighting the good fight on all this and let us know how we can help.
Awesome. Yeah. And hey, it's Brittany here from the Stacks Foundation. I think just echoing what everyone said here, I think it's a very exciting time in Stacks. I mean, we just completed the launch of Stacks 2.1. So those of you who are stackers, this is a very critical piece to sBTC being possible. Continuous stacking will open up with that in probably about the next 30 days. So, instead of having to worry about when you have a cool down period and kind of unstacking and restacking, this will get upgraded. So we're really excited to see the launch of that. Another thing just to note is around grants and bounties. We've overhauled our program with grants to make it very specific to the infrastructure that's needed within the ecosystem. So we're soliciting people from the community, from other companies to submit sort of the wish list grants that they have, the infrastructure pieces that they need. And what we really need is builders who can come in, pick up some of those different pieces, start contributing and building. So I highly recommend checking out stacks.org/grants. You can see all of the opportunities, and it's a great place to really build in and jump in, contribute, and build together. And then just sort of the third thing I want to mention is around core development. You've heard it multiple times, the number of blockchain engineers that are building has almost like 4x in the past few months. So we're getting a lot of things done very quickly. But all of this depends on the governance process and our SIPs process, which is open to anyone. You don't have to be a core developer. You don't have to be a developer to get involved and review this SIP for sBTC. It's public. You can comment. You can have discussions around it. sBTC will also require being voted in from the community. So we really encourage people to stay on track of what's happening, what's important to you, what are the dynamics of it, because this isn't just, the people who are writing the code, this is the whole community's product. So being able to contribute and get involved. We have a lot of great programs. Hero Gamer, I think he's on here. He's helping run SIPs. He does a great job in the community, just letting people know what's going on. So I'd highly encourage you, even if you're not shipping code, to stay involved in the governance process. And we'd love to see more involvement from the community there. Yeah, heroes. SIP call weekly, Fridays at 11. Great. I'll pass it off to Andre.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. And yeah, as for me, I'm the new sBTC resident. You can think of me as kind of the chief advocate for sBTC. I'll be leading the product go-to-market, really collaborating with a lot of teams around the ecosystem, including engineering, marketing, partnerships, just making sure that everyone is aligned and rowing in the same direction towards the launch of sBTC. My mission is to really make sure that we deliver a world-class user experience for this product when it goes live. So really thinking about who are the target audiences that we're reaching with this, and what are the use cases that we can deliver to them to provide a really exceptional experience for how they use their Bitcoin. And so how do we make that happen? Really, my goals right now are focused on making sure that we launch on schedule, just making sure that there's accountability for the milestones that we outline, that we have showcase applications and use cases available when we launch, so people have ways to really put their Bitcoin to work, as well as focusing on making sure that we have key integrations and partnerships live. So focused on these partners that can really help us bootstrap the network and grow adoption to really get things off the ground.
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly chime in on Andre's role as well. So when he's sort of saying that, hey, we're working on these things, I think it's important to differentiate that his role is more like herding cats. This is an open source ecosystem, right? So in any open source project, there's someone whose responsibility is just following up with people, herding cats, sort of hey, everyone's going in the right direction, because it's not like he has any real control over all the devs and the resources in the ecosystem, right? So it's not like we expect a delivery of a product from him. No, we as a community, we as an open source project, have him as sort of in a position where he can help coordinate the open source parts of the system. And then I think it's very important to realize it's our responsibility as a community together to push this forward, right? Like really, truly take this as an open source project. Like there are devs who work for various companies or foundations or other startups. They're all trying to come together in working groups. And it's like, this is public good, everyone will benefit. Let's try to figure out how all of us can grow in the same direction as efficiently as possible. The attitude should not be, I'm going to sit back and wait for a delivery of a perfect product that's just magically going to show up at our doorstep, right? Because this is like very different from Web 2, where there's a company that is delivering a product for you.
Yeah, but to your point, Muneeb, it really is all hands on deck to get this across the finish line, and happy to do my part to make it easier for the ecosystem to collaborate and herd all of these various cats. All right, so I think we should probably spend a little bit of time talking about ordinals. There's been a ton of activity over the last couple of weeks here. It feels like this ecosystem is really changing day by day, but there are a couple of quick highlights here that we just wanted to call out and really shout out to the Stacks ecosystem for getting these deliverables over the finish line. But so we saw Gamma shipped their ordinals inscriptions, making it at least a 10x, not 100x improvement for actually interacting with the protocol. NeoSwap is working on trustless ordinal swaps. Satoshiables also minted an inscription service for minting on ordinals. Xverse Wallet has shipped first-class support for ordinals, really creating a good user experience to sort of see all of your ordinals in your Xverse wallet. And Hero is also focused on shipping developer tools. They're working on building an Ordinals Explorer, an API, and other sort of infrastructure level supports to make it really easy to build and interact with the Ordinals protocol. Lastly, we've had some updates with BNX. So BNSX enables the community to inscribe .btc names as ordinals. So making sure that BNS is really sort of front and center here, and we're finding ways to unlock new capability for that aligned with ordinals.
Yeah, I think Jeff or Hank might be on the call, and I know we're running tight on time, but it'd be awesome to hear from them around BNSX.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to be fast. Hey, I'm Jeff from the Mechanism team. We recently started working on BNS full time. We're working on an upgrade called BNSX, which is going to ship soon. And we also love ordinals and ordinals is like really interesting and cool and kind of very exciting. And so there's a few projects that we've seen there that have sprung up that kind of say like, we're also BNS and they're like minting names and going to start auctioning off names, which is a little crazy since BNS has been writing names to Bitcoin in some versions since like 2015. A lot of the Stacks early team and like Jude actually like pioneered like how you would do this on Bitcoin and have done it like several different ways over the years. And that evolved into the BNS system we all know today, and there's 220,000 names. But this sort of development made us wonder, like, is there some deeper connection with ordinals that makes sense? Can you actually add functionality to BNS if you hooked into that or did something with it? That was kind of the question. And also, like, is there some way to sort of flex, like more from a community point of view, like, hey, we've been doing this for 7 years and like, we have a lot of traction with it. We've been doing it on Bitcoin, basically. So Hank can kind of build anything in a few days. So he kind of thought of this idea of finding a way to inscribe your zone file data, which is already on Stacks as an ordinal, which proves that you kind of established it, much earlier, and it was, on Stacks and thus on Bitcoin. But it's also a way of kind of like recording it for the first time in both places, but pointing to one name. So it's kind of this like, kind of utility that helps you kind of add more sort of canonical nature to your name, maybe. And in the future, it kind of just records it. But in the future, you can imagine actually using that ordinal data for new functionality or using it like on the Stacks layer in new ways. And that's the like interesting new design space that kind of opens up. Yeah, it's also a way to like let everybody know in the wider kind of Web3 community that we've been doing this for a long time and we're 220,000 names strong. So that's the point of this URL. This is actually the web app that we are going to ship with the proper release of BNSX, just not released yet, but the utility is out there. Like I said, Hank built it in like 2 days. If you just go to the website, it walks you through it. It just takes a few minutes, and you'll have your BNS name saved as an ordinal. And if you lose that URL or have questions or whatever, just ask in the Stacks BNS Discord channel or on the BNS DAO Discord. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Jeff. Yeah, so there's no doubt that ordinals has been a huge unlock for the Stacks ecosystem so far. I'm kind of viewing this as like a user acquisition strategy where it's bringing a lot more volume and attention to the Stacks chain. And so, many of you are probably wondering, what exactly is the relationship between ordinals and sBTC? And I think that, and Muneeb's kind of alluded to this earlier, but the more activity there is on the L1, the more the greater the need for the scalable L2 layers on Bitcoin. And so, the way that I kind of see it right now is that sBTC could really provide the sort of permissionless trading infrastructure interacting with ordinals on the Stacks layer that's really complementary to everything that we see going on right now. So that's sort of like my quick take about how they interact with each other. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but I know it's probably something that's on top of mind for a lot of people here.
Yeah, no, I think you got it right, and I understand that people might have to jump on other calls as well. So feel free to jump. We might continue for a little while just because we still have like 70 plus people on the call. So you got it right. So the more the Bitcoin L1 gets used, I think the more in demand Bitcoin L2s are. It's as simple as that, right? So and the important thing about sBTC is what ordinals did to the NFT community, right? Like where so many people got energized about Bitcoin NFTs, I think is what sBTC can do to Bitcoin DeFi. Like again, it's a very simple analogy that you can ignite kind of like the spark on like, oh, people go like, I understand it now. Bitcoin DeFi could be a very large market, just like ordinals kind of like spark that interest for the Bitcoin NFT market. And yeah, I would love to hear from Trevor. And actually a bunch of community members were pinging me, and they were asking if JP could say a few words. I don't know, JP, I don't want to put you on the spot either, but maybe Trevor first, and then people want to hear from JP. For people who don't know, JP is a professor at Princeton where he runs the crypto research center there and a co-founder of Trust Machines.
Yeah, I just want, JP, are you going to go?
No, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this ordinals thing is much bigger than NFTs on Bitcoin. It's really the start of a new era on Bitcoin and Bitcoin culture. It's transitioning from a time when people saw that the Bitcoin coin was the most valuable thing, and that's all they thought was useful at Bitcoin was the token, to an era where we actually see block space as being the most valuable aspect of Bitcoin. And that is fundamentally the best thing that could have ever happened for Stacks. It is what has been my thesis, and I knew for a fact was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen now and so quickly. And I think it's really important how we communicate going forward as a Stacks community. And as all of you know, I've been on Twitter fighting with maxis all the time, trying to lay the dunks on them on Twitter as much as I can. And I've learned a lot from that process, made mistakes, had some good moments, etc. And I think that we can learn a lot from how Lightning communicates, because Lightning is the network where Udi Wertheimer said this rather, that he saw data that showed the average Walmart in the United States has more transactions in one day than the Lightning Network. Okay. Yet maxis love it. And a lot of them don't use it, but they love it, they promote it, et cetera. And so how does Lightning communicate in a way that's different than Stacks communicates? I think that what I saw at the start of Ordinals was a lot of the Stacks community and just general members of the community going out and being like, oh, NFTs on Stacks are better. We like, stop using those ordinals, like NFTs on Stacks. They're great, they're scalable. And I think that's always the temptation, is to like, we're a super passionate community. We have one of the best communities, I think, in the entire space, but really we need to be involved in what's happening on Bitcoin. We need to integrate with the Bitcoin community, because that's how we're going to fight or avoid the immune system response. Ordinals had the immune system response, but it beat it, right? It was like a cancer cell that the maxis tried to attack, but they couldn't kill it. And so they attacked themselves after that, right? And so we can learn from that and how we approach the coming 6 months to integrate with the Bitcoin community better. when I go to BitDevs meetups, I don't see Stacks people there, for example, right? We have a lot of our own separate events. We have our own branding. We have our own community, but we need to reach out and not make it about ourselves. If orders are successful, Block's case becomes more expensive, Stacks wins. We don't need to build anything on Stacks to get for the need to for Stacks to appear. We need to make ordinals successful and block space more expensive, and then things will automatically happen on Stacks. And so when this ordinals thing started, a lot of people are coming to me and be like, Trevor, why aren't you talking about Stacks? I didn't mention Stacks at all, right? But naturally, a lot of people are coming to Stacks now because I was just out there participating, being authentic, trying to integrate with the people who are building stuff. We did see some pushback immediately from Casey himself, right? That he has since sort of went backwards on that, because as a Stacks community, you know, like I told a lot of people, don't make this about Stacks, make this about Bitcoin. And I think in our communication, I've kind of been looking through a lot of like old blog posts and stuff. A lot of times I will see the phrase like Stacks adds utility to Bitcoin. I didn't know this, but Bitcoin maxis are very, very sensitive, like extremely sensitive. There's a feeling of skepticism towards everybody in the Bitcoin community, kind of like they always attack each other. They're always like, what's your intention? And so we have to be very, very cognizant to in no way say anything bad about Bitcoin. Even the idea of we're adding utility to Bitcoin can be perceived as a diss against Bitcoin by Bitcoin maximalists. And so reframing it, like if you look at how Lightning market, it just says instant Bitcoin transactions. It doesn't say we help the slow Bitcoin to be faster and be instant, right? And so I think those are some things that we can learn as a community in our communication, not just like the executives, but also the community members, to make everything we do about Bitcoin, make the message that Bitcoin is awesome, and describe Stacks in a way where there's no doubt that it's casting any shade on Bitcoin, that like we're here as a member of the Bitcoin community for it. And I think if we capture the moment and we can avoid the immune system response when we launch the sBTC, we're going to ride off into the sunset. So that's my take.
And with that, I do think we have to wrap. This has been an incredible town hall, and thank you so much for everyone contributing your thoughts, from Trevor and Alex, Brittany, JP, etc. So we can share this presentation after the fact. I do want to just point out that there are these working groups where folks are really collaborating on the various work streams toward sBTC, working on improvements for BNS and thinking about how we can really advance the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. So if you want to get involved, we'll drop the link in GitHub and we'll just share it again, and would love to just work together on this journey ahead.
Yeah, and there are some new channels on Discord as well. So people who are interested in the working groups or the sBTC work, I think one clear action item is join the channels on Discord. There's some fresh new ones, and in general, really great to see the community come together. I think we'll do more kind of like even more laid back town halls, maybe less presentations, more chatting, and just try to figure out how we can connect this community together, because we're all rowing in the same direction. Thanks everyone. Thank you so much.